attention like ladies and gents when I mention my name at the door. And I hope you'll pardon me, see by my card I am finding a world we may explore. You're in the dream I have drawn. You're like the wings for my song. I get a lift with your gift to know right from the wrong. Really strong. Our imagination will find this occasion to go where we know we belong.
It was Harold's bedtime. Harold scrunched up his pillow one way, plumped it up another way, flipped onto his left side, flopped onto his right side. But he just couldn't fall asleep. When Harold sat up, the stars came out, one by one, and the moon seemed to glow more brightly. After thinking it over for some time, Harold decided to go for a walk in the moonlight. But Harold realized he needed something to walk on. He drew a long, straight path so he wouldn't get lost, and he set off on his walk, taking his purple crayon with him. Harold didn't seem to be getting anywhere on the long, straight path. So he left the path for a shortcut across a field. And the moon went with him.
Maybe the moon is an orange. Whoa, and aren't you glad that we're here? So every mountain is fountain we dream will appear in the clear. And when you cross over, you're really in clover. Imagine and it will appear.
By this time, Harold was getting thirsty, so he drew himself a glass of milk. was so many bubbles that he couldn't find his way. So, Harold drew a porcupine. Harold wanted to thank his new friend, but then he realized you must always be careful when hugging a porcupine. So Harold found another way to thank the deserving porcupine. Harold laid out a nice, simple picnic lunch. It was nice and simple because there was nothing but pie. Well, there were all 9 kinds of pie that Harold liked best. When Harold and the porcupine finished their picnic of pies, there was still quite a lot left. Harold hated to see so much delicious pie go to waste. So, Harold drew a hungry moose to help finish it up. Soon, Harold came to a place where he thought a forest ought to be. But Harold didn't want to lose his way, so Harold drew a very small forest with just one tree in it. It turned out to be an apple tree. The apples would be very tasty, Harold thought, when they got red. So he put a frightening dragon under the tree to guard the apples. It was a terribly frightening dragon. It even frightened Harold. He backed away. His hand holding the purple crayon shook. Suddenly, he realized what was happening. But by then, Harold was over his head in an ocean. Harold came up thinking fast, and in no time he was climbing aboard a trim little boat. But his friends were still in trouble. Fortunately, Harold was a quick draw. Harold was so happy his friends were safe. But then Harold remembered, you must always be careful when hugging a porcupine. Harold set sail, and the moon sailed along with them.
What is our destiny, baby New Guinea? So give it a hoe and a heave. We got the stuff when the going gets tough, and no doubt it's about time to leave. Give it a heave and a hoe. Aloha. Was that aloha? Hello. You never know, but when you gotta get in the flow, you just go. Our imagination is our navigation. It tells us where we gotta go.
The wind died down. Harold had to find another way to get the boat moving. So Harold gave it some thought. And he drew a whale. Then the weather changed, and not for the better. Harold was scared, but he tried to hold a steady course. Harold didn't realize it, but he was heading straight for the dragon. The wind was against them. But Harold had an idea. Harold knew that they couldn't run away from the terribly frightening dragon. So Harold did what he had to do. The dragon had brought Harold apples from the tree, now all juicy, ripe, and red. Harold felt sorry that the dragon had gone to so much trouble to bring him the apples. So, Harold invited the dragon on board to share the apples with them. It was a bit crowded on the boat. So Harold figured they could always use an extra sail. much to Harold's surprise, the dragon was an expert juggler. As Harold looked up, the clouds drifted past the moon, and Harold felt that special tingle in his heart that told him it was time to go home. Harold made land without much trouble. Then he said goodbye to his friends. Harold hugged the porcupine very carefully. Off he went, looking for a hill to climb to see where he was. Harold knew that the higher up he went, the farther he could see. So he decided to make the hill into a mountain. Harold was tired and he felt he ought to be getting to bed. He hoped he could see his bedroom window from the top of the mountain. But as he looked down over the other side, Harold slipped, and there wasn't any other side of the mountain. He was falling in thin air. But luckily, Harold kept his wits and his purple crayon. He made a balloon, and he grabbed onto it. And he made a basket under the balloon big enough to stand in. Harold had a fine view from the balloon, but he couldn't see his window. He couldn't even see a house. So he made a house with windows. And he landed the balloon on the grass in the front yard. None of the windows was his window. He tried to think where his window ought to be. He made some more windows. He made a big building full of big windows. He made lots of buildings full of windows. He made a whole city full of windows. But none of the windows was his window. Harold was afraid. But then Harold remembered that things are never as bad as they seem. Harold decided to ask a policeman for directions. The policeman pointed the direction Harold was already going. Harold thanked him anyway. And he walked along with the moon, wishing he was in his room and in bed.
Where was I going? Oh yes, the wrong direction, I guess. Her chance to dream when in fact it would seem I digress. I confess, my imagination has caused a sensation, but now it's abundantly clear. I know I'm back home when you're near.
Then suddenly, Harold remembered. He remembered where his bedroom window was when there was a moon. It was always right around the moon. And then Harold made his bed. He got in and drew up the covers. The purple crayon dropped on the floor, and Harold, with a peaceful feeling inside, dropped off to sleep.